So welcome to the Argent Centre Revealed talk this evening. We're running it as part of the Jewellery Quarter Townscape Heritage Activity Programme, which aims to engage people with the heritage of an area within the Jewellery Quarter, including Frederick Street, where the Argent Centre is based. Townscape Heritage is a heritage-led regeneration project and its National Lottery Heritage Fund scheme. It's grant-aided, this Argent Centre restoration, and the project was led by its owners, Midland Industrial Association Limited. MIA Limited is a community benefit organisation set up to regenerate the Midlands economy by repurposing of redundant buildings and providing workspace. MIA took on the Argent Centre in 1984 and developed it to provide managed workspace for a diverse number of businesses as part of their ongoing economic regeneration work. The building is also home to the Pen Museum, which is dedicated to honouring and celebrating Birmingham's 19th century steel pen trade. The restoration of the Argent Centre is the result of the work of a big team. So we want to say, on behalf of the Jewellery Quarter community, thank you to everyone who's been involved. So the focus of this evening's talk is to take a look back at the work that's happened in the last year. It's been a really difficult year. It's been turbulent and unexpected for us all. But despite this, the project has continued, and we're pleased to say that it's completed. So we're going to hear from Philip Waghorn of Oliver Architecture and Andy Cornwell from Midland Conservation Limited, who have worked on the project. And before we get started, just a few housekeeping points. Can everyone please ensure that you stay muted throughout the talk so that everyone can hear the speakers clearly? I may mute people if there's kind of noise, so please don't be offended by that. You can type questions in the chat box throughout the talk, but questions will be answered at the end when both speakers are presented. After the talk, I'll send an evaluation form round, and I'd be really grateful if everyone could complete the quick survey, as it helps us to improve our event and to evaluate the whole programme. Finally, this talk is being recorded, so you can re-watch it, and there will be subtitles as well. So that's enough for me. I'm going to hand over to Philip, who's going to start with the presentation this evening.
Thank you, Kate. Okay. So, hi, I'm Philip Waghorn. I'm architect and associate at Oliver Architecture, and I was also the project architect for the Argent Centre Facade Repairs. If you could go to the next slide, please, Kate. Oliver Architecture is an award-winning practice. So I'm going to show you through or take you through the introduction of Oliver Architecture, go through the history of the Argent Centre, talk about the turrets and also the facade repairs that, which we have undertaken. And then I'll hand over to Andy, who will also take you through the contractor side of the project. So Oliver Architecture is an award-winning practice that specialises in the heritage sector. We are based in the Coffin Works, which is located in the Jewellery Quarter, and we operate across the country, caring for important historical structures and their settings, with a particular interest in ecclesiastical architecture. We conserve, repair and carry out alterations and extensions to heritage buildings and design new new buildings in historic settings. These range from cathedrals, we look after Peterborough and Brecon, to parish churches, National Trust properties, private residences, NHS listed property and educational buildings associated with Oxford University. Oliver Architecture was the lead in a multidisciplinary design team. Our role was the architect, principal designer and contract administrator, and we were assisted by the following companies. We had F.W. Haywood and Associates, who were the structural engineers, and Peter Gunning and Partners, who were the quantity surveyors. Next slide, please. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Kate. The history of the Argent Centre. So the Argent Centre is an iconic structure at the entrance to the Jewellery Quarter. It is Grade 2 star listed and lies within the Jewellery Quarter conservation area. So if we go to the next slide. The site of the Argent Centre was originally developed as a pair of semi-detached houses, probably in 1821, with a charity school next door on Leg Lane. The Victoria Works on the opposite side of Frederick Street were built for Gillett pen manufactory in the late 1830s. The site was completely redeveloped in 1862/1863 for W.E. Wiley & Co. pen and gold pen manufacturers to the designs of Birmingham architect John George Bland, 1820 to 1898, who also designed a number of factories in Kidderminster and other buildings within the Jewellery Quarter. Originally known as the Albert Works, to complement the adjacent Victoria Works, the Argent Centre is an Italianate style with extensive use of polychrome or polychromatic brickwork and carved stone capitals. The original building included a Turkish baths on the 3 upper floors, and this opened on the 27th of December in 1862 as Birmingham's second commercial Turkish baths. There were a series of alterations in the 19th century, which included the pediment entrance doors on Leg Lane, as well as the erection of the third side of the quadrangle and also the roof additions. By this date, the building was known as the Argent Centre, as the works for W.J. Myatt & Co., silversmiths and electroplaters from 1906. If we can go to the next slide. The frontage on Frederick Street was extended in the early 20th century in a red brick faced steel frame with Art Deco flourishes. So this is the right image on that slide. If we go on to the next slide. So now I'll be talking to you about the turrets. So when we originally started the project, it was not known when the corner pyramids were removed, or if they indeed were ever built. We have only found sketches and engravings with no photographic record of the turrets ever existing. If we go to the next slide. Please, Kate.
Sorry.
It's okay. It is imagined that these were removed as a post-1945 alteration associated with the decline of the fortunes of Jewellery Quarter. The proposal for the works at the Argent Centre as part of the facade repairs was to rectify this serious adverse impact on the appreciation of the building and reinstate the pyramids as a major heritage gain for the project. If we go to the next slide. We have used the Building News 1863 engraving, which is the image on the right, together with an existing measure survey, which is the image on the left, to create a series of comparative heights for the pyramids using reverse perspective in order for the new design to be drawn. The engravings appear to show bands of plain and fish scale tiles or possible slates with a patterned lead hip or decorative clay hips. We intended, as part of the project, to recreate this within our proposal for the turrets and to finish it with new gilt copper finials at the apex based on the 1863 image, which is what we can see on the right hand side. If we go to the next slide, you might notice that the finials are not in gold. Following our planning application, it was decided that it would be far more fitting for the finials to be polished stainless steel. The reasoning for this is associated with the future maintenance of finials, which are at very high levels, so regular maintenance is almost impossible. And the gilding, which would then tarnish over time, also creating another maintenance issue. As part of the project and discussions, the client also pointed out that argent is the Heldrick term for silver, so we thought it was more than fitting to create them in polished stainless steel. And I think hopefully everyone can agree that we do look rather good. MCL, so next slide, please. So as part of the project, which Andy will talk about more, Midland Conservation stripped the felt flat roof and tiles sides to expose the roof structure, which we discovered to have machine cut timbers, and a handful of historic tiles were found. If we go to the next slide, please. These were club tiles, which we matched them to a local firm, Dreadnought Tiles, which they helped us choose a colour and texture that matched, for which we reproduced as the end product. If we go to the next slide, following the stripping of the toilet bases, it was quickly identified that the toilets are not square. This proved to be a difficult obstacle to overcome and resulted in slopes and hips that would be at different angles. Andy will talk you through this with more of the on-site difficulties that we discovered. This meant that our proposed Aris hip tiles, so next slide, that'd be great, would not work. This was part of the planning. So the Aris hips would just not work. As you can see in the image, it's just doesn't line up and is very poor match. We had then to rethink the hips and came up with the lead hidden gutter detail. The hidden part of the gutter isn't quite so true now, as we wanted to minimise the risk of debris building up. Seagulls are a real pain in the area, and also to reduce the maintenance of the gutters themselves in the future. I think we are extremely happy with how these turned out, and think that the way the lead gutters frame the clay tiles is very well and gives them a really good defined character. So if we move on to the facade repairs, so the facades to the Leg Lane and Frederick Street are quite wonderful with a multicoloured brickwork. From a distance, the elevations looked okay, but with closer inspection, which was carried out using a cherry picker at weekends, we discovered three main areas of concern. So if we go to the next slide, the steel frame of the Art Deco Northern Range had several vertical fractures. So the image on the left shows these fractures, and then the image on the right is actually the finished article. And if we go on to the next slide, the limestone columns and capitals have mostly been dressed off, so to remove architectural details, which is the image on the right. And the image on the left is the sandstone lintels. The first floor openings are laid on bed, so this tends to delaminate on their soffit, which creates an issue of falling stone. There had been a period of repairs which we couldn't quite identify when they were carried out, but a lot of repairs have been carried out in skim cement, which you can see on the brickwork above the stone lintel in the red brick area. If we go on to the next slide, the client instructed a firm to carry out a measured survey of the elevation. So this is we had coloured in this elevation to create some nicer decorative drawings. One to show just show off the Argent Centre itself, and then we used these drawings as a base. So if we go on to the next slide, so we zoomed in and created much more detailed survey drawings where we itemised and identified all the areas which needed repair. We went through 4 iterations of these repairs as when scaffold was erected. We ended up going from the top down, so dropped from bay by bay to identify repairs that were required. And sometimes we had to roll back on these repairs as monies. Well, there was one area where I tried to say that we wanted to repair all the lintels and have new, which the QS quite quickly told me that we didn't have money in the budget to do. So that's the joy of being a heritage architect. You have to sort of try and define when and where you can actually carry out repairs, and how far do you go. So moving on, we also carried out chimney repairs as part of the project. This changed from simple repointing and rebedding the top 5 courses into quite an extensive repointing, doing stone, brick and stonework repairs, and also stabilising bricks within the chimney flue, as one of the main issues was that pigeons were falling down the inside of the chimney, but also we found quite a lot of brick debris as well. So we identified that to be an area that we really needed to repair. Andy will talk about this later in his talk. The next item, so the Frederick Street raised facade. As part of the works, we raised the height of the parapet to this section of Frederick Street. This is to improve the safety, but also to allow for correct flashings, and also a insulation to the top of the roof. When unpicking the existing parapet, none of the brickwork was tied in, and all the existing bricks were cut headers. So on the image on the right, that's a full-size brick, and as you can see with the bricks below, these were cut back. We improved this detail by tying in the brickwork into the parapet, but installing new brickwork above. This was all done in semi-engineering bricks, so as the parapets and copings are in very exposed areas. If we go to the next slide. So the 1930s extension, and well, this shows the, so this goes back to that Frederick Street elevation with the raised bit. So you can see we've got a new lead capping, and you can see the raised brickwork and the finished item on the right. If we go to the next slide. The 1930s extension had several vertical fractures in the enabling works, and we exposed the steel frame in one area to establish that the brickwork surround is fully filled with mortar up to the steelwork. So any movement in the steel frame will be transferred directly onto the brickwork, causing the fractures. It was accepted that this was an ongoing issue, and other than a major facade rebuilding, the only practical solution was to accept that regular repointing of fractures in a soft lime mortar and replacing of cracked bricks is the only possible way of repairing this elevation. Then this brings us on to these final images of the facades. But so now I'll hand over to Andy and from Midland Conservation to talk you through the works from the contractor's perspective.
Hi all. So I'm Andy Cornwell, one of the directors from Midland Conservation. We obviously are a specialist in conservation and restoration, established in 2007. We work generally across the Midlands region. We try to stay within 70 miles of Birmingham, but we find some of the projects down south, we go as far as Blenheim Palace. And up north, we're going up north as far as Hardwick Hall for the National Trust. We've got offices in Aldridge and workshops over in Litchfield. And the business is run by two directors, which is myself and Jason Graham. We're both working directors. We've both come up through the ranks. So I trained as a stonemason back in the 80s, 82. And Jace as a bricklayer, and so we've worked our way up through the ranks from working as a site operative, going up to site foremen, site managers, contracts managers, and now fellow directors. We've got an experienced management team behind us that work out of the Aldridge office, so we've got contracts managers, estimators, surveyors, and obviously the admin guys who help bring all the projects to fruition. Next slide, please, Kate.
Sorry, for some reason there's a bit of a delay. There we are.
Yeah, so we're one of the leading conservation specialists. We've got a 50-strong team of stonemasons, lead workers, bricklayers, roofers, carpenters, lime plasterers. And I would say 95% of those guys are directly employed through PAYE. And we also have in amongst that group 5 apprentices studying stonemasonry up at York College, which is a 3-year course. And then guys at who are studying for carpentry and brickwork at Stafford and Walsall colleges. Next slide, please, Kate. So we work across the Midlands, and it's just a flavour there of some of the projects that we've worked on over the last 13 years. Worked on all the major cathedrals in the Midlands region: Litchfield, Derby, Coventry, St Philip's, Birmingham, and then obviously various private clients: Hagley Hall Estates, Lord Cobham, the Grand Hotel for Horton Estates, and Blenheim Palace on the Grand Bridge and Bladen Bridge, and then numerous National Trust properties across the region listed there. And then on top of all that, we've got all the churches, ancient monuments, castles, etc. We specialise in conservation and restoration, and that is, we stick to what we know basically. So next slide, please, Kate. Just want to give you a flavour of some of the projects that we've done over the years. Top left is the Hermitage at Kedleston Hall, 18th century, built in 1762. It's a Grade 2 listed building within a Grade 1 park and garden. The works are about £90,000. The Hermitage is situated on the Robert Adam Long Walk set in the parkland. What we found on the with what we saw on the left-hand side there, that's how we found it when we started the project. Encased in scaffold and looking extremely sorry for itself. We did major works for plane tree. Roots go right through the foundations of the Hermitage. So some careful restoration works had to be done around there. Some stonework repairs, new timber roof structure, new thatch roof, new oak doors, oak windows with crown glass. Top right, we've got Litchfield Cathedral. Again, this is a £1.3 million project that we completed in 2015. Extensive stonework repairs to flying buttresses, parapets, mullions, traceries. We also did extensive work on the Herken Road glass, which is, they were saying, was the most unique medieval glass. It's been untouched since those times, and I reckon the stained glass windows came from the Abbey of Herken Road in Liege, and seven of those windows came from the Abbey of Herken Road in Liege. Bottom left is Grand Hoc Hotel. This is in Birmingham, situated on Cornwell Row and Church Street, opposite St Philip's. Built in 1879, Grade 2 star Victorian hotel. Architect was Thomas Clevins. Client was Horton Estates. It was closed in 2002 because of extensive crumbling stonework. We did extensive £3.5 million restoration work on the facades on predominantly Cornwell Row and Church Street, which entailed a lot of stonework, masonry repairs, repairs to all the sash windows and rainwater goods. And then bottom right, the windmill at Wolverhampton, built in 1720 by John Chamberlain, Grade 2 listed, apparently the oldest inhabited windmill in the country. On the left, this was destroyed by a gas explosion in October 2018. The guy who owns the windmill is a guy called Ian Thorpe, who runs Midland Power Hoists. He was actually sat on the settee when the explosion happened. Fortunately, he was at the right end of the settee, and I think the settee provided him with a bit of protection. But yeah, he survived and he's all well. But so on the right-hand side there, you can see the windmill as it is now rebuilt with the brick facade, new roof, new slates, new windows, etc. So next slide, please, Kate. Yeah, this is the Argent Centre, pen manufactory. I pulled this out because I quite like this illustration. Shows it without the 1930s section of building, which would have been on the far right on Frederick Street as you're looking at that. Again, designed by J.G. Blandy in 1863, Grade 2 star listed. I think you get a sense with this illustration of grandeur with the building. It also highlights the turrets, which is probably one of the most important parts of a project, of our restoration project. And also, if you look at the ground first and second floor windows, you get that colonnade effect as you're looking down both elevations. So yeah, and for me, a good illustration. Next slide, please, Kate. So again, same drawing that Philip showed you earlier, the extract from the Building News of 1863. And obviously this is what the architects use as evidence to try and recreate the turrets as they are now. So if you notice on the drawing, if you look at the details on the tiling, on the patterns and the coursing, and look at the finial, when you come to see the later slides, you'll see that we've tried to be as true to those details as we possibly can, really. Next slide, please, Kate. So this is the southeast turret. So on the left there, you can see the roof structure as we found it. So the flat roof at the top was a basic mineral felt, and there were plain tiles on the roof slopes. You can see the rafters and the hip rafters. When you come to look at the later slides, you'll see a difference in size on the timber roof structure. So to me, the turret roof structure as when we found it, looks quite flimsy to me. Yeah, so what else can I tell you on this one? Yeah, so the brickwork was built up between the rafters. There would have been a timber fascia board on the end of the rafter feet there, and that would have had a half round gutter below there. On this southeast turret, there's a staircase that runs to ground, and on the southwest turret is an office that is in use today as well. And you can just see as well, if you look on the right-hand photograph, you can just make out the corbelling below the brick eaves, which gives like a polychrome effect. You've got brick, red, blue, buff bricks there. It all adds to the features of a building. Next slide, please, Kate. So again, this is the southeast turret. So before we started construction of the timber roof structure, we made a mock-up of the roof to really ascertain the scale of the roof and how it was going to look. That pitch is 63, 64 degrees. And so that is pretty much what we went with on the setting out for the turret roof structures. As Philip said, the problem is that the turrets are all out of square. I think out of both turrets, I think there was one corner that was 90 degrees, and I think in some places the wall was about 15 inches out of square, which from a construction point of view creates problems for us in all sorts of manners, really, because really to form that roof structure, you've got 4 hip rafters and then a series of intermediate rafters between the hip rafters. In theory, you could template one hip rafter and be able to use that for the other 3 rafters. You could also template all the intermediate rafters for one side of the roof slope, and again, use those templates for the other 3. We were not able to do that with this. We had to template every single hip rafter and every single intermediate rafter, which you can imagine took 3 or 4 times longer than it should have done, really, but it is what it is. Next slide, please, Kate. So again, this is a club tile. This was found actually under one of the wall plates. And again, this evidence was used to select a replacement tile. Tiles came from Dreadnought Tiles in Brierley Hill. They were on a 16-week lead-in. And so you can imagine that's took quite a bit of planning to make sure that that fitted in with the programme that we were working to. The samples that we chose, we went for a red-blue mix with a sand face finish. We also had to order a whole load of tile and halves and tile and a half club tiles because we couldn't use the hips because of if we used a hip tile, we would have had to make 8 different templates for the hip tile because of each different angles. It just wouldn't have worked. So next slide, please, Kate. So again, southeast turret. Again, if you look at the size of timbers, they're considerably bigger than the original. Hip rafters are 300 by 50 timbers, back treated, bolted together with stainless steel bolts. Intermediate rafters were 200 by 50s, I think, or I think they were 175 by 50s actually. Again, all bolted together. You can just make out the upper cross trees within the timber roof structure there, which provided support for the stainless steel finial and roundel at the top, but I'll show you that on the next slide. If you look as well at the top of the apex of the turret, we've got a square section timber there, which the hip rafters all mitre into. That was used there because we needed to pass the rod through that square section of timber to pass down through the cross trees. So if you go on to the next slide, Kate. So here you can see the upper cross trees and the lower cross trees, and you can also see the threaded rod and the connector for the stainless steel finial. So that stainless finial is not going anywhere, basically. It's clamped at the upper cross trees section and the lower cross trees section. It's all stainless steel. You can also see as well on that drawing, on that photograph, just on the right-hand side, on the rake of the hip rafter, the roll mould detail being formed for the lead hip detail. This was all designed by Clive Hayward from FW Hayward Structural Engineers. Next slide, please. Okay. So yeah, here we have the felted section of the roof, again on the southeast turret. You'll see the felt is actually draped over the roll mould, and the rafters are counterbattened. One of the reasons for the counterbattening was it allowed us to form the lead upstand for the lead hip detail to get the water away. Next slide, please, Kate. So here we go. Here's your completed turret. Again, I think if you look back to the other drawing, I think that is a pretty good resemblance to what we were trying to recreate. Again, you can see the coursing on the tiles with the club tiles and the plain tiles. And this really is where the tile and halves came into play, because we couldn't fix the tiles. Because we've got a lead hip detail, we couldn't fix the tiles through the lead hip because it comes up on the upstand and then tucks under and back on itself. And we needed to have at least 2 fixings per tile, this is where the tile and halves came in. So as you got towards the top of the apex of the turret, that did make life difficult, and it was difficult to try and maintain a bond with the tiling. Yep, next slide, please, Kate. So here we have the stainless steel finial. This was manufactured and installed by Oakham Fabrications from Cradley Heath. So you can see there, again, this was trying to replicate the drawing from the 1863 detail. So you've got a central rod with the leaves welded on and formed separately. And then you've got a stainless steel roundel at the base of the finial. That helped with the waterproofing detail. You can see the lead apron in the right-hand shot there. So our lead plumbers tried to create the lead club detail and create a little bit of a roll detail there. But it's also allowed him to bring his code lead up to the underside of a roundel and form a waterproof detail there, basically, so we didn't get driving rain in, etc. Next slide, please, Glenn. So, stonework. Building like this, you'd think it'd all be the same stone, but no. We selected 4 different stones across the elevations. For the lintels, we used a Woodcock Stone, which is Yorkshire stone. For the carved finials to the columns, we used a Scaffold stone from Cheltenham. And columns, sills and kneelers, we used Stoke Ground base bed, which is another limestone. And then door surround on Leg Lane was a Darney stone from Northumberland. Next slide, please. Okay. So this is the Woodcock Stone, and I say this is a carboniferous. It's fine grained, really good hardware and durable sandstone. You can see on the right there that it's in its position there, just above the column, that central column. You can see the new stone lintel in. Looks nice and easy to fix, but it wasn't, because the stone lintel sits in the brickwork on the left-hand side and the right-hand side. So we had to take the brickwork out on both sides to feed the lintel in, as well as support the column, and as well as supporting the brickwork above. So a complicated piece of fixing there. Next slide, Kate. So here we go. So this is a Scaffold stone. This is a fine-grained oolitic limestone. This was selected. We chose 2 limestones for the project, the Scaffold and the Stoke Ground base bed. The Stoke Ground base bed is an oolitic limestone, but it's hard wearing. But it does have quite a bit of shelling, and it's not the most suitable for carving. So that's why we chose the Scaffold. The fine grain makes it better to carve, and you can get some good arises or sharp edges, should I say. So what you're looking at there is one of the capitals that will sit on one of the circular columns. That is basically work from a square block. So one of our banker stonemasons. So from a masonry point of view, a banker mason is a mason who will work stone on a banker. A fixer mason is obviously the guy who will fix that and install it. So on the left there, you can see where he's got his markings, where he's just it's a simple sort of a canvas leaf detail there. And again, that would all be templated, measured, and sizes, dimensions all taken off the original and matched exactly. And again, on the right there, you can see a completed capital. Next slide, Kate. So here we go. So this is one of the bore finial capitals, column capitals. You can see the condition of it. The finials have been lost. There's cracks through the centre of the stone, etc. So obviously needs some work doing to it. And then on the right-hand side, you can see a couple of ball finial capitals that have been worked that are ready to go to site. And again, that is all worked by hand by our banker masons with mallet and chisels, or dummy and a chisel. And there's probably at least a week and a half's work in one of those capitals each. Next slide, Kate. So again, some stonework in situ on the left-hand side there. You can just see the upper section of the column is in poor condition and is scheduled for replacement. That might look like an easy job, but above that column capital, you've got arched masonry. So just to replace that section of the stone column there, we've had to form 2 timber centres to match the profile of the arches above. They've both been propped then with acro props to take the weight, and then we've had to carefully, the capital I think in that instance has been saved. We've had to carefully cut that section of stone out and replace with a new section. On the right hand side there, you can see the new column capital, which is a ciphered. If you look at the column below is the Stoke ground base bed, so you can see they're very similar in colour. I don't think from walking past you would be able to distinguish between the two really. Next slide, Kate. So here we are again. These a couple of damaged plinth column capitals that have been repaired. You can see the individual bore finials that have been replaced. So these would have had to be a square section would have been drilled and pinned onto the existing stone and resined on, and then the mason would work those stones to match. And you can see at the bottom as well the ovolo mould at the bottom is an addition as well. So next slide, Kate. So here we are in situ. So you can see the intricacy of that work and how much time is, there's probably as much time doing the repairs on the left-hand side as there is in working a new stone capital on the right-hand side. And again, you can see the column there is a Stoke ground base bed, whereas the capital is ciphered, which is, say, the better stone to work for the carving. Next slide, please, Kate. Okay, so these are this is a high-level sort of colonnade string course. These stone corbels are in Stoke ground base bed. Again, durable limestone. You can get a good edge on it, as you can see there. And on the right-hand side, you can see where the corner of the turret is being rebuilt and the new stonework is going in. And you can see the condition of the stonework on the left that is being replaced, how poor it is. Next slide. Okay. Yeah, so this is, again, Stoke ground sill on the left-hand side installed. Again, it sits in the brickwork on the left-hand side and the right-hand side, so we've had to carefully take the brickwork out on both sides to get that stone silling. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the condition of some of the existing sills. And again, as Philip pointed out earlier, if you look at the bottom of the column, there's some render repairs to the ovolo detail at the base there, which in places we've had to leave because the funding isn't there to do every repair that you would have liked. Next slide, Kate. So here we are. This is the door surround for Leg Lane elevation. Originally, this was going to be, we selected a stone called Grinsill, which is from Shrewsbury. But there was major delays with procurement of the stone from that quarry. They were having problems extracting block from the quarry, so we eventually went for a Darney stone, which is a fine-grained sandstone from Northumberland. So you can see there we've replaced the pediment springer on the right-hand side. There's a couple of sections of pediment on the rake that have been replaced. And then on the right-hand pilaster, there's a series of indents there and fluting that have been cut out and indented. Again, in a situation like this, we try and retain as much of the existing fabric as we can and replace what needs replacing. Next slide, Kate. So yeah, so this is the Boiler Chimney Two, which is adjacent to roof 2. So this was a fully scaffolded chimney right from the ground up, and there was a drop-down scaffold inside the chimney as well. If we go to the next slide, Kate. So this is the high-level brickwork. You can see if you look on the left-hand side, left-hand photograph, there's a bit of a steel frame to the upper sections of the chimney. There's obviously, I don't know what point that was installed, but there were obviously concerns at some point about the stability of the brickwork. So a frame was put around the upper section of the chimney to provide additional support. You can just see as well the termination finial rod for the lightning conductor. I mean, generally, what we found on the chimney was the buff bricks were in the poorest condition, and we found we were replacing a lot more of those than the red, and occasionally, well, the blue bricks were fine, to be fair. On the right-hand side there, you can see where sections of the brickwork, the chimney is 9 inches thick, basically, so 2 courses of brick. But you can see on the right-hand side there where the brickwork has blown right the way through to the internal face of the chimney. Generally predominant with the chimney, it was isolated brick repairs and isolated repointing. We were down to take down and rebuild the top 5 courses of brick corbelling, but we took the top 3 or 4, I think it was. But the mortar was that hard; we were causing more damage by trying to take it down. So, next slide, please, Kate. So here we go. This is the drop-down scaffold inside the chimney. I think this dropped down about 3 meters, something like that. So the guys have climbed down the ladder. They're all harnessed on, and this was all suspended from the external tube and frame scaffold. So you can see on the right how many, the quantity of bricks that were replaced and the condition of them. And then on the left-hand side, you can see that hasn't been cleaned off. But I mean, you can see the brick replacements with a lime mortar. So again, reclaimed bricks were used to try and match the existing, and a 3-in-1 lime mortar mix. Next slide, Kate.
Oh, just add to that one, Andy. We did discuss quite a few options of trying to how we could repair that brickwork without actually having to replace bricks. We did talk about putting a lime render in, or a cement render, didn't we? But realised that would probably drop off. So it was
potentially a maintenance issue, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a lovely experience of going down into that chimney.
Yeah. Sorry, next slide, Kate. So obviously there were extensive brick repairs across the elevations. The brick on the left-hand side, not James Bond, unfortunately, but John Bond, that brick was found in between the rafters on the southeast turret. John Bond was a brick manufacturer based in Borsley Green, and he manufactured bricks, I believe, from 1841 to 1908. And I think he had 4 different sites around the Borsley Green area that he was producing bricks from. On the right-hand side there, you can see brick arch. I think that's on the turret, on the southeast turret. Those rubbers, red rubbers and buff rubbers, are nearly 400 millimetres long. They were produced by Lamb's Bricks, handmade, made to order for this particular project. Again, extensive lead-in procurement period. We cheated a little bit with the buff rubbers, in that where we had a buff brick that was in poor condition, we replaced it with a Stoke ground base bed bourgeois, should I say, arch stone. It was a little bit quicker, cheaper, certainly, and it helped out with the programme. So, next slide, Kate. So, yeah, this is roof 2. There are 3 roofs on this project. Funnily enough, they were called roof 1, roof 2, and roof 3. Roof 1 and 3 had a timber substrate. Roof 2 was a concrete screed substrate. This was one of the big unknowns for the whole design team, really, at the start of the project, because there's obviously leaks from the roof, and we got no idea what the condition of the timber substrate was going to be. Fortunately, on all three roofs, the substrate was in pretty good order, with some minor remedial repairs done, but it wasn't as bad as we all thought. So again, on the right hand side there, you can see the new ICO membrane going down. That's a 3-layer membrane with a 120mm insulation beneath it. And then obviously all the lead cover flashings were replaced all the way around all the roofs. And on roof 1, we reinstated the stainless steel coping details. So next slide, please. So this is the 1930s section of the building. Again, this is a steel frame building, and obviously the steel frame is contracting, expanding, and causing problems for the brick masonry, but also for the metal frame windows. Surprisingly, not to the spandrel panels. So the spandrel, if you look on the left-hand side, your spandrel panels, which are cast iron, and extremely decorative, it has to be said, set between each brick pilaster and set between the first, second, and third floors. They are really quite a decorative feature, and but the steel frame building is expanding and contracting and causing problems for the brickwork. The photograph that Philip showed you is extensive vertical cracking. In those situations, it was simply a case of cutting the brick out and reinstating again a reclaimed brick to match bedded in a lime mortar. And again, the metal frame windows, what we found was the metal frame windows were bulging in places because of the pressure from the steel frame that was being put on them. The original schedule of work was to remove the metal frame windows, not all of them, but some of them. But what we felt was that would cause, once we had a closer look, we felt that would cause too much damage. So the glazing specialist, who was Nick Baelish from based in the Jewellery Quarter, he basically advised that we do remedial repairs to the metal frame windows, and that would be replacing short sections of rusted. It might be in a sill section, a mullion, a transom section. But what we found was we take the glass out and then cut through the transom or mullion, and the window would spring back to its original position because the compression had been removed from that window. So yeah, so extensive repairs to the metal frame windows. They were cleaned down and decorated. Next slide, Kate, please. So up on the third floor, well, on I think first and second floor and third, is there was render lintels above the metal frame windows, and there was extensive cracking to the cement render. Basically, the reinforcing, ideally, which set in the render should have a sort of 50mm cover, but we found in places it was within sort of 5-10 mil of the surface of the rendered lintel. So it was a case of cutting back the damaged render to a square finish and installing stainless steel reinforcing and making good the rendered lintels with a concrete repair mix. On the right-hand photo there, you can see the spandrel panel cleaned down. You can see there's quite a bit of detail in that panel with the chevrons running vertically, but that was cleaned with the DOF superheated steam cleaning system, and that basically removed there was about 3 layers of paint that was flaking off, and then we applied obviously I think it was Kime, wasn't it, Philip?
No, it was Tickerilla in the end.
It was Tickerilla, that was it. Yeah.
So
Well done.
it's a water-based paint.
Yeah, yeah. Next slide, please, Kate. So again, here you can see the newly decorated spandrel panels and windows and the brick replacement. Obviously, the bricks are all bedded in lime mortar, and lime mortar always looks a little bit brash bright when it's first gone in. 6 months with the amount of traffic that goes past the Argent Centre, you won't know that work has even been done. And if you look on Leg Lane, that complete elevation on Leg Lane was repointed. That was repointed right at the start of the project, and I mean, I looked at it only last week, and you can't tell it's been repointed. It looks fantastic. So I think, is that the last one, Kate?
It is. Yeah. Thank you very much. It's fascinating to see all of the close-ups, the photos, and it just really gives you a sense of how much work goes into every element of the building. So that's really interesting. Thank you. We've had a couple of questions. So I'm going to start with one from Stephen, which was, if I can find it now. So it's about the finials on the turrets. So this might be for you, Andy or Philip. Are there lightning conductors, and where do they go to earth?
No, they're not lightning conductors. The building has its own lightning conductor, which is Europe. I think it's to European standard, isn't it? So it's not like one of the old British standard lightning conductors where you have a finial and that's your sort of strike point. I think they have a radius that covers the whole building with the existing lightning conductor. So no, they're not lightning conductors.
Thank you. So Adam's asking, he's curious to know when there appears to be an extension to the roof, and when was that added? So the roof goes further up the side of the turrets than on those on the original building.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll answer that one. So you've on Frederick Street, you've obviously got the 4-story addition, which was the Turkish bath. So that was built when it was first erected. But then, which then lies next to it, you've got quite a plain red brick addition. This is roughly about 1930s when this addition was added. This was to add more office units effectively to the building.
Thank you. Josie's asking, and this is a question for both of you to answer, what was the biggest challenge of this project?
The turrets.
Yeah, turrets, definitely turrets.
Yeah.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
Also, scheduling up all the repairs. That was that was quite time. It was quite a long period to go through each elevation. So we tried to do it in sections, lift by lift, and then there was lots of different additions. So about 4 revisions we did in total for all the elevations.
Right. Okay. Josie says the turrets were worth all the effort.
Thank you.
I'm glad she likes them.
Carmel is asking, will the turrets be illuminated, and if so, when?
There are plans to do the illuminations. The brackets are already on or fixed, so it's all about switching them on, which I'm hopefully will be sometimes this week, won't it, Andy? Or if
I would have thought so. Yeah.
Brilliant. And Craig has asked, when can we look forward to a Turkish bath?
It's no longer, they don't exist anymore. It's all office units now. It's all been converted, unfortunately.
Okay. So Lizzie has asked, what mortar mixes were used?
I knew this question would arise. I think I know one of the samples was one NHL2 lime to 1 red building sand, 1 yellow building sand, and 1 grit sand. But okay. I can't. I know that was a good match in one area, but a lot of repointing was done in cement. So
yeah.
I don't know whether you can add to that, Andy. But
I think it was pretty much a 3 and a 1 mix, wasn't it? I don't remember the exact ratio. I mean, Colin would have a better idea on that. But again, everything was lime mortar basically, wasn't it? So
Great, thank you. I'm gonna Andy Munro would like to say something on behalf of MIA Limited in a second, but we've just got one question from Irene about the chimney. And was the chimney capped in some way to avoid future pigeon problems, do you think?
no, it wasn't, was it? This is something we discussed at length early on in the project. Do we cap the chimney? We could have put some kind of lead apron detail or lead cover flashing up there, but I think we felt in the end we might be creating more problems than we're solving. I don't know if you've got any more to add to that, Philip.
Yeah, it's still also being blue as part of the boiler system.
That's right. Yeah.
We would have had issues of building up of gas in all sorts, so we just decided to leave it open.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Andy Munro, would you like to speak?
Yes, please, Kate. Just a couple of things, really. Obviously, first of all, to congratulate the architects and Midland Conservation on a fabulous and absolutely painstaking job which this presentation's brought out. We invested over £500,000 in this project, but we certainly couldn't have done it without the expertise and obviously the funding from Heritage Lottery. So obviously want to thank everybody on that. Just a couple of points of interest as well, which probably I don't think were mentioned regarding the history of the building. When we took it over almost 40 years ago, it was used by Fisons for storing manure. Not quite the image we'd want for today's Jewellery Quarter. So just something that made me smile a bit. And the other thing is, somebody mentioned the cottages that were there before the Argent Centre. And those cottages had their own history, really, because that's where Washington Irving wrote the classic Rip Van Winkle when he was staying over in the UK on holiday from America. So just a bit of extra history there. And finally, somebody did mention about the lighting of the finials. It may be in the future, but it's a wonderful gateway to the quarter, the Argent Centre, obviously more so now. And maybe at some stage we'd like to look at some uplighting. So if the architects or Midland Conservation have got any contacts for that, that'd be something handy to have in the future.
Oh, Andy, it's already included in the scheme, so we're just waiting for them to be switched on.
Is that right? The uplighting on the pavement?
Not from the pavement, but
No.
they're on the turrets.
Sorry, Philip, that's what I was thinking. Maybe in the future, it's such a beautiful building. That's something we might like to look at. So,
okay, yeah, we'll be more than happy to help.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Cheers.
So just to add that the talk will be, it's been recorded and it's going to be added to YouTube. We've also had a film made, so it's in the editing stages at the moment. So we've had 2 time-lapse cameras set up by overlooking the turret, so it's captured the whole of that process, as well as lots of close-up shots of the work that's been carried out on the brickwork, stonework and so on. And there's also lots of drone footage, so capturing the project from above, and it's beautiful footage of the Jewellery Quarter as a whole, really. So we hope to put that out in the next few weeks. So we'll send that round to everyone that attended this talk, because I'm sure you'll all be interested. So yes, thank you very much. I think we're just over time, so lots of people saying thank you, Andy and Philip, and yeah, my thanks as well for a really interesting talk, and thanks for all of your work over the last year as well.
Not a problem. I think also probably one to add, because people might be interested, this project did actually start on the 6th of November. Oh no, it didn't start on the 6th of November. It started early January in 2020, and then we had a period. Was it 6 weeks that we closed down due to COVID?
7 weeks. Yeah, 7 weeks.
Due to COVID. So that moved the completion date, which should have been 6th of November, to well, it was just the end of January, so it's taken just over a year to get it done. So it's certainly been an interesting one, especially during COVID times, but we've managed to keep it rolling, so I have to thank Andy and MCL to keeping it going.
Yeah, really good achievement. Okay.
Good stuff.
Thank you, everyone.